we're back again with this year's version of this list. We like to do this annually because, quite frankly, there's still so many characters we need to see come back. With that in mind, I'm Sean Farrick for TrekCulture, and here are 10 characters who must return 2024. Number 10, Shakar Edon. To begin this list with a character pulled from the annals of Trek, Shakar Edon is the first minister of Bajor. He was last seen in The Begotten, butting heads with Miles O'Brien, while Kira Nerys did the actual hard work of the hour. As it stands, the last information we have on him is that he is still in power. Bajor is shown to have joined the Federation in Season 2 of Star Trek Picard, evidenced by the inclusion of their flag at Starfleet Academy. That being the case, the time has come for an exploration of the recent history of Bajor. How has the planet, and indeed its political landscape, fared after the actions of Kai Wynn and Gul Dukat in the Fire Caves? Shakar served as Wynn's largest political rival, and her sudden departure from his orbit would leave him without much in the way of opposition. Though this seems positive, one must remember that Bajor's government was tenuous at best. Picard's depiction suggests that Bajor has very much survived, but what does it look like now as part of the larger Federation landscape? And how does Shakar, once a freedom fighter, then a farmer, then a political figurehead, feature in that version of Bajor's future? This is something that could very easily be discussed either in Discovery's 5th season or Starfleet Academy's debut season. Number 9, Lily Sloan. Though history tends to deify Zefram Cochrane for breaking the warp barrier, not least in the entire amusement park, complete with statue and replica Phoenix in Bozeman, Montana, there has been a person who's been quietly erased from that same history. There was more than one seat in that cockpit, so how has the world forgotten Lily Sloan so quickly? Lily was brought to life by Alfred Woodard in Star Trek First Contact, quickly establishing herself as one of the best guest stars in the film franchise. Her exchange in the observation lounge with Picard is now a thing of legend, but her place in Trek's history deserves more acclaim. Star Trek Lower Decks may seem the best place to bring the character back to life. With the park already in existence of the show, another quick trip to Bozeman would rectify this wrong would be a simple thing. Sloan quite literally saved humanity, not simply from the Borg, but from the trauma they inflicted on a bitterly hurt captain who needed a guiding hand. Could she be our tough love counselor for a new batch of recruits? Number 8, 7 of 9, Raffi. It does seem like we mention them a lot, doesn't it? There really are several reasons, with the ultimate question of their current relationship rising to the top. Raffi's exploration of the criminal underbelly of the Trek universe explains their separation, but need they remain apart? The end of Star Trek Picard did introduce a spanner in the works in terms of them coming back together. Their ascendancy to command of the Enterprise G would seem to place a firm wedge between them, but as we know, stranger things have happened in Star Trek. This naturally leads into the next incredibly important reason for their return. What the heck was Seven gonna say as the Enterprise went to warp? Without this crucial knowledge, how can we hope to rest? Perhaps she would like the ship to go now. Whatever the answer, their return would hopefully herald the commencement of Star Trek Legacy. So this is a dream we really don't want to fade away. Number 7, Liam Shaw. Death means nothing in Star Trek, and we don't necessarily need the man to return in all of his ghost candle ways. Liam Shaw was an officer who survived Wolf 359, then continued to serve, rising through the service until finally taking command of the Titan A in the mid-2390s. What then is his service history in the years between? Did he struggle to move into the command path, or did he take to it like an engineer to a service duct? How many years of therapy did he attend before Starfleet would happily sign him fit for duty? Shaw is a character who's fascinating for many reasons. Until Star Trek Picard, it was generally just Picard and Sisko who received exploration for post-Wolf 359 trauma. Then along comes Shaw, and we are reminded of the 11,000 officers who were killed in the battle. This, we feel, will be something that begs depiction. Has the time finally come for a long trek on the Battle of Wolf 359, realized now with the technology available to us? There are already incredibly impressive productions online, not least of which being the oral history of Wolf 359 or the CGI spectacular that is the Massacre in 2 parts. This seems like a perfect story to depict. Number 6, Quark. Now, before anyone says it, we know that Quark has featured in Star Trek Lower Decks as recently as the show's 3rd season, so why is he here, you may shout with impunity at me? Though the question is heard and understood, hear me out. Lower Decks depicted Quark still very much on Deep Space Nine, running his station and running away from the Karama. But by the late 2390s, he is franchised, with Quark's bars appearing on Free Cloud. He was a known co-conspirator with the Ferengi Sneed, who himself had worrying associations in the underworld. Quark famously boasted that he would remain a bastion for the Ferengi of old, probably what drew Sneed to him, when his brother ascended to the role of Grand Nagus. While Rom has shown the capacity for at least a little of Ferengi traditionalism, it it is really Quark who needs to return properly, exploring and exploiting the galaxy, perhaps even as an instructor, holographic or no, at the Academy, teaching bright new faces the correct way to rig a dabo wheel. Number 5. Sela. Star Trek Discovery's 5th season opens with the revelation of a Romulan scout ship almost 1,000 years old, containing an old secret that starts a new adventure. But just what is this secret? If we go back to the early seasons of Star Trek The Next Generation, the episode Contagion sees the introduction of the Iconians, with their homeworld located deep inside the neutral zone. Sela's fate has remained a mystery since that show's 5th season. But with the Hobus supernova in the 2380s and the dissolution of what was once a vast star empire, the Romulans found themselves in a somewhat similar situation to the Iconians of old, decimated, without a central power, and no longer a force to be reckoned with in the quadrant. Sela proved both in her initial and subsequent appearances that she was a loyalist through and through. The idea she would abandon the Senate, regardless of any punishment she may have received for the escape of Picard, Data, and Spock, seems unlikely. She also does not seem the likely type to support the Riemann uprising, so just where has she been? And what has she been doing? Though Star Trek Picard touched on the state of the Empire in its first season, it seems far more likely that Discovery will be the one to answer some of the many questions we have regarding the Romulans. Sela, as played by Denise Crosby, seems the best way to link various Trek iterations while answering some of its oldest mysteries. Number 4. Sybok. Star Trek Strange New Worlds has introduced the existence of Sybok within Ethan Peck's tenure as Spock. Though Starfleet, for the most part, would only become aware of the errant Vulcan during the events of Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, there are so many unanswered questions out there. Sybok is shown to have at least a passing acquaintance with T'Pring, the latter of whom is not currently on the best terms with Spock. Sybok must, knowing his future as we do, escape his prison, so will this add yet another layer to the animosity between Spock and T'Pring? We have seen her cold and distant, hurt by Spock's actions, moving to break away from him by the events of Amok Time. However, could she aid Sybok in his escape, perhaps as a means to strike back at Spock for his lack of faith in her? Though this may seem to veer toward petty, would actually lean closer to empathy than revenge. Spock is the so-called greater son of Sarek, despite his half-human nature. Sybok is the outsider. He is also a skilled manipulator, no matter how altruistic his apparent intentions are. A mutual respect and understanding between Sybok and T'Pring could, in a very direct way, lead to one of the greatest lines in all of Star Trek. What does God need with a starship? Number 3. Reginald Barkley. Star Trek Prodigy has already brought Admiral Janeway, Captain Chakotay, and, thanks to the teaser for the 2nd season, the emergency medical hologram back to us. Seven, Tom Paris, and Tuvok have all appeared on Picard or Lower Decks, or both. So what then of the remaining characters? First, Barkley, who quickly became a more established Voyager crewman as the Enterprise seemed a little incompatible. The final scenes of Star Trek Voyager see the ship return to the Alpha Quadrant. We were sadly robbed of an arrival to Earth. This is not simply the onboard crew that we miss, but those in charge of Project Pathfinder as well. Barkley found his home on Voyager, even with thousands of light years between them. As wonderful as the ship's appearance in Lower Decks was, it seemed a little odd that Barkley himself wasn't manning the museum. No matter if we can see what has become of the man in Star Trek Prodigy's 2nd season. Barkley has in many ways become an icon of Trek fandom. He always seemed a little out of place and was often underestimated by his peers. He found his home in fantasy, though he was finally whole once he found acceptance in his chosen family. As it stands, the last we saw of him was his shock at Voyager's sudden arrival. Watching him join them in person would truly be a heartwarming moment, and one that will be sure to warm even the greenest of hearts. Number 2. Harry Kim and Berna Torres. In something that is sadly true to form, poor Harry Kim remains one of the 2 Voyager senior staff not to have been brought back to the franchise so far. While Berna herself is in the same category, it must also be noted that her influence is all over the 1st season of Star Trek Prodigy, as it was she who designed the Federation edition of the USS Dauntless. Perhaps this may sound a bit selfish, but that's just not enough. Tom Paris made an appearance in Lower Decks, so it seems only fair that his better half should have the same opportunity at least. On that same vein, did Harry ever get that promotion? While it's undeniably funny to imagine Harry as still an ensign, even years later, it's far more fitting that he would have achieved at least the rank of commander by the time of Prodigy. It is only a couple of years later, after all, in universe. Paris himself had only achieved a promotion to lieutenant by Lower Decks' 1st season, so the opportunity is there for Star Trek to do some really funny things with the characters. Perhaps a full cast reunion may not be on the cards at the moment, but there certainly seems room to explore one or both of the fates of these final 2 crucial Voyager crew members. While we're at it, did anyone ever actually tell Neelix what happened with the Transwarp hub? Number 1. Wesley Crusher and Cory. Where do do the travelers go? Is there a hub? Is there a central city? Is there a focal point in time? The introduction of the original traveler in Where No One Has Gone Before was fascinating, offering audiences a glimpse at a race that far outstripped Starfleet in terms of their understanding of the universe. For a long time, the traveler was mostly tied to stories of Wesley Crusher's brilliance, which remained unexplored beyond a surface level at least until both Journey's End and finally Farewell. It's the latter now that begs a revisit. This episode saw the return of Wesley Crusher to Star Trek, now collecting Adam Soong's genetically engineered daughter Cory, inviting her to join him. The Travelers were now shown to work alongside the Supervisors, another group who monitor variances in time. Time here is the crucial factor. The 5th season of Discovery is approaching, with a mystery that is ancient. Wesley and Cory stepped into a transporter that could take them anywhere, so why not to the future? Beyond simple fan service, this would go further in closing the wide gap between all of the various shows in the franchise. It would also help if this was the direction that the writers go in to explain why there are so many time-traveling beings in the franchise and why they don't all bump into each other along the way. There is also the question of the temporal wars and what role the Travelers or the Supervisors played in them. There are so many avenues to explore, though there is but one season of Discovery left. This is something that could also be explored in Star Trek Starfleet Academy, a new direction with a wealth of history and fan-pleasing franchise moments to put smiles on the faces of Trekkies for years to come. That's everything for our list today, folks. What did you reckon? Let us know in the comments below. Please don't forget to get out and reach out to us. We're at TrekCulture on all the various socials. Type it in, you'll find us. I'm at Sean Ferrick. You can find me on the various socials as well. Look after yourselves, folks. Make sure that you live long and prosper. Whatever you end up doing in 2024, I hope the year treats you well because you deserve it too. You deserve nice things, and make sure you tell yourself that every now and again. Thanks very much. Bye.